Welcome back everyone to Self-Serving Skillet. This week we're taking a second look at turkey-related leftovers for which we're going to need our turkey stock that we made a couple weeks ago. I'm going to pour my stock through this mesh strainer to make sure I didn't miss any bones or anything, and then I'm going to reserve some for the egg foo young gravy I made last week, leaving me with 2 liters or around half a gallon of stock for my pozole. To that, I'm going to add 1 drained can of hominy. This just happens to be 25 ounces or 709 grams. Hominy is corn that has been soaked in an alkali solution, which has all sorts of historical makes, from wood ash mixed with water to toasting freshwater shells over a fire for several hours. This was probably done to increase the time that the corn could be stored, because the alkali kills the germ so that it cannot be sprouted. But it also increases the nutrient absorption of the corn itself to the human digestive system. I'm going to get that in my stock now because this needs a little time to simmer. I saved my wingtips from the turkey. I'm going to get those into the stock because they have a lot of collagen and will really help to improve the body of my soup. Then later, I'm going to add the meat of 1 turkey thigh. I'm going to cut that up now because I want the bone to simmer in with the stock. Pozole rojo, which is the type of pozole that we are making today, is usually made with pork. However, this is not a traditional pozole. So we could just add this can of chipotle peppers and adobo sauce, which would taste delicious. So if you don't have a lot of time to spend on this, do that. Or we could blend up our own adobo sauce with some of these dried chilies. I'm using 3 different varieties of chilies: chile pasilla, chile guajillo, and chile arbol. Let's start with the chile pasilla. This one both smells and tastes like a dried fruit with a little bit of warmth on the back end. I'm using 7 in total because that's all this bag had in it. This chili will add a much needed fruity note to my adobo. Moving on to the chile guajillo. This one turns up the heat a little bit in the form of a smoky spice. Again, I'm using 7 to match the 7 chile pasilla that I used. This will be the body of my adobo. Lastly, the chile arbol. This one doesn't taste like anything. It's just hot. This will be the heat of my dish. I'm using 3 because I'm sharing with a couple of people that don't love heat as much as I do, and I did guess correctly that this was right at their threshold. For myself, who appreciates a little more heat, I might use 4 or 5. Anyway, make sure to remove all the seeds from your peppers, otherwise you won't even be able to eat this, and wear some gloves with the really hot ones, otherwise you won't realize why you should have until it's too late. I didn't have any gloves, so I'm using these bamboo toaster tongs. Get all those into a bowl and cover them with hot water for half an hour while your hominy simmers in your stock. I'm going to quarter this onion the long way, leaving the root intact. I'm going to simmer these quarters in my stock, which will improve the flavor of my soup and make the onions easier to blend up in my adobo. I also want to prep about 2 tablespoons of fresh oregano. If you're using dry, only use half as much. Then I'm going to add a couple bay leaves right before I let this sit and simmer for half an hour. And then when I come back, it's blender time. First up, I'm going to go through the laborious and unnecessary process of picking these out with the aforementioned toaster tongs. If you're not a glutton for punishment, you can strain these out the same way that I strain my stock, but save that water because we'll be using it later. Next, I want 4 cloves of garlic, which I'm going to crush and reserve the papers for future stock. I'm going to give these a rough chop so they have a little bit easier time in the blender. And the onions, which are nicely softened by now. Yep, those are hot, buddy. I'm going to remove the roots, which might not be completely necessary as I'm going to strain this later. The oregano goes in, as well as about 2 tablespoons of white vinegar, and throw it on blend for 3 or 4 minutes to liquefy. Take the chili liquid that we set aside from before and pour in just enough to get a good blend going. If it seems to slow down at any point, don't be afraid to add some more. The longer you let this go, the easier time you'll have in the next step. And the more liquid you can make this, the longer your blender will perform without complaint. Finally, after what was about 4.5 minutes for me, I'm pretty satisfied with the consistency of my adobo. I'm looking for something like a Thai chili sauce, which is almost what this is. You can absolutely eat your adobo as it appears now, but if you don't strain it, it will be a texture as well as a flavor, and I'm gonna end up chewing my soup. You could spend the money and buy yourself a food mill, but this alternative cost me around $16, is easier to wash, and consists of parts that are already standard issue in my kitchen. It just takes a little more effort. Run your spatula along the side of the strainer until all that's left is a paste. Remember to scrape the bottom, all that adobo is usable. Let's remove the bay leaves and these bones from the simmer, portion off the adobo that I'm not going to use, maybe I'll make an adobo chili next time, and pour in what I'm going to call 3/4 cup or around 180 milliliters. Give it a taste for spiciness. This flavor is going to change just slightly over the next half hour that we let this simmer so that all the flavors can come together. Add our turkey thigh in. If this was pork, depending on the cut, this would already be in the soup. However, the turkey is more prone to dryness, so I really want it in for this last half hour. I'm going to start to cool this soup down so I can put it in the fridge right away. If you put it in there hot, it will raise the temperature of your refrigerator for a ridiculous amount of time, and your other food might start to spoil. This is the last part of that giant Thanksgiving prep that you saw a couple episodes ago. My pozole garnish is cilantro, purple cabbage, the last radishes of the season from my garden, and a squeeze of lime. And this is something special. Bold, savory, just spicy enough. It has that smoky heat from the guajillo with a little sweet chili on one shoulder and spicy on the other. The veggies give it some texture and the lime makes it pop. This might be my favorite thing that I've made on the show so far. Do me a favor and click the broken egg to subscribe. I have new content coming out every Saturday at 9 a.m. Central Time. Next week, I'm taking a look at a classic cold weather cocktail. And don't forget to let your hunger be your inspiration.